Keep it kind. Maya, my mother whispered. As if kindness meant letting them steal my voice one more time. I had already given up my business class seat so a terrified little boy could sit beside his mother. I had already arrived in New York, exhausted. With airport hair, wrinkled clothes, and a family waiting to use my silence like decoration. But when my sister smiled across that engagement luncheon, sitting beside the man who once promised to marry me, I finally understood something. They had not invited me there to heal. They had invited me there to prove their betrayal had not hurt me, and they had no idea I had brought the truth with me. The gate agent called my name like I had stolen something. Everyone at gate C18 turned when she said, "Miss Maya Ellis, we need to speak with you about your seat." I was standing there with a paper cup of airport coffee. One carry-on. And the only business class ticket I had ever bought for myself. By the time I reached the counter, a little boy was crying into his mother's coat. And somehow I already knew I was about to lose something I had earned. I was 32 years old. A pediatric discharge coordinator at a hospital in Portland, Oregon. Which meant I spent most of my days teaching exhausted parents how to take home children who were still fragile. I knew the sound of a mother trying not to panic. I knew the way a child's fingers curled around her sleeve when the world felt too big. So, when the gate agent explained that a mother and her 7-year-old had been separated across the plane after a last-minute aircraft swap, I looked past her shoulder and saw the boy shaking. The mother was trying to smile at him, but her eyes were wet. "It's okay, honey," she whispered. Though nothing about her face believed it. The boy kept saying, "I don't want to sit alone." The gate agent lowered her voice and told me they had one seat in business next to him. But the mother's assigned seat was in the back. No one else had volunteered. No one wanted to trade down on a packed Friday flight from Portland to New York. I should have said no. I had every right to say no. That ticket had cost me 2 months of skipped lunches, 3 extra weekend shifts, and the small emergency envelope I kept taped behind my dresser drawer. I bought it because I was flying to my younger sister's engagement weekend, where my family would pretend they had always loved me in public while correcting me in private. I bought it because, for once, I wanted to arrive rested. I wanted to walk into that hotel with my back straight, my hair smooth, and no one's pity on my shoulders. Instead, I heard my mother's voice in my head before the gate agent even finished speaking. "Maya has always been practical. She doesn't need much." That was what my family called taking things from me without asking. Practical, flexible, understanding. They had used those words until they sounded polite. But they were just prettier names for disposable. I looked at the mother. Then, at the boy clinging to her. And I hated how quickly my heart moved before my pride could stop it. "I'll switch," I said. The gate agent blinked like she hadn't expected an answer that simple. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Your original seat is 2A. The replacement is middle seat. Economy. Near the back." I nodded before she could make it sound worse. The mother put one hand over her mouth and started thanking me in broken, embarrassed sentences. I told her not to worry. I said it was just a seat. But when the agent handed me the new boarding pass, the paper felt heavier than it should have. My phone buzzed before boarding began. It was a message from my mother. "Please don't be late. Claire is nervous and needs support. Also, wear something soft. Not that navy dress that makes you look severe." I stared at the screen until the words blurred slightly. Claire was 28. Beautiful in a curated way. And nervous only when attention risked leaving her. She had been needing support since the day she learned that crying first usually meant winning first. When we were kids, Claire got the bedroom with the bay window because she was sensitive to light. I got the small room facing the alley because I was old enough to understand. When our father died, Claire got his watch because she cried harder at the funeral. I got the folder of unpaid bills because I knew how to organize paperwork. When my college fund disappeared into Claire's therapy retreats and pageant coaching, my mother said, "You're stronger than your sister." Maya, don't make this about money. I didn't answer the text. I placed the phone face down in my palm and walked onto the plane with the slow calm of someone trying not to cry in public. As I passed the first rows, the mother settled beside her son in my old seat. The boy had stopped crying. He pressed his forehead to the window, already pointing at the wing like the whole world had been repaired. His mother looked up at me with gratitude so raw that I had to look away. My new seat was 34B, between a man in a gray hoodie and a college student already asleep with headphones on. The hoodie man stood immediately when I reached the row, taking my bag before I could wrestle it overhead. He was tall, maybe late 30s, with dark hair, quiet eyes, and the kind of stillness people either earn through discipline or hide behind when they do not want to be recognized. Middle seat, he said. Not like a complaint, but like a fact. We both survived. Apparently my destiny, I said. Because humor was easier than explaining that my chest felt tight. He smiled once. Not wide, but enough to soften his face. Destiny usually has worse legroom. I laughed before I meant to. It came out tired and small. He stepped back so I could sit, then settled beside the window with his knees angled carefully to give me space. He smelled faintly of cedar soap and airport coffee. Nothing flashy. No watch that shouted. No designer luggage. Just a black backpack under his seat. I buckled in and tried not to think about 2A. The flight attendant came by to confirm meals. And when she reached me, she glanced at the tablet and paused. Ms. Ellis. I'm sorry. Your meal preference didn't transfer with the seat change. That's okay, I said. Anything is fine. The man beside me turned his head slightly. He had heard. People always hear the part where you accept less. They rarely hear the years that trained you to do it quietly. You gave up a business class seat, he asked, after the attendant moved on. His voice was low. Careful. Not nosy. A mother needed to sit with her son. I said. That doesn't answer why you gave it up. I looked at him then. Most people would have praised me and been done with it. Because praise is a cheap way to avoid discomfort. But he was watching me like the answer mattered. Because I know what it feels like to be scared and told you should be fine. He didn't respond right away. The engines hummed deeper under us. Outside, the runway lights stretched in clean white lines against the gray Oregon afternoon. Finally, he said. That's not kindness. That's memory. The sentence landed too close. I turned toward the aisle, pretending to check the overhead bin. Because strangers are dangerous when they name something accurately. I had spent years trying to make my pain look useful. Useful pain gets invited to dinner. Honest pain makes people uncomfortable. My name is Noah, he said after a while. Maya, I replied. He did not ask where I was going immediately, which made me trust him more than I should have. Instead, he opened a battered paperback and let silence sit between us like a third passenger. I noticed his hands before the book. Long fingers. A faint scar near one knuckle. Nails clean but not manicured. He looked like someone who had money only if you knew the kind of people who stopped needing to prove it. Half an hour into the flight, my phone buzzed again after we reached cruising altitude and Wi-Fi connected. This time it was Claire. Mom says you changed seats for some random kid. That is so you. Just don't show up looking exhausted in photos. I stared at the message, then locked the screen. Noah's eyes flicked toward it for half a second. Not enough to read. Just enough to notice my hand tightening. Family? He asked. Unfortunately, I said before I could make it polite. He didn't laugh. Big weekend. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. My sister's engagement party. 3 days of champagne, speeches, and pretending history is a misunderstanding. That time. He did look at me. That sounds expensive. Emotionally or financially, both. I almost smiled. The hotel is expensive. The emotional part has always been free. He closed his book around one finger, marking the page. People who make you pay for belonging usually call it tradition. I opened my eyes. You say that like you've met my mother. I've met a lot of boards, he said. Families and boards behave the same when control is dressed up as love. That should have sounded dramatic. It didn't. It sounded like experience. I wondered what kind of job taught a man in a hoodie to compare mothers to corporate governance at 30,000 feet. I almost asked. Then the college student shifted in his sleep. And the moment passed. Dinner service came with lukewarm pasta and a roll hard enough to require commitment. Noah traded me his cookie without ceremony when he noticed mine was missing. I don't need it, he said. Neither do I. That's not what I said. It was such a small correction. But it made my throat tighten. My whole life. People had confused my not demanding things with not wanting them. He placed the cookie on my tray anyway and went back to his book. As if he had not just broken a rule I had lived by for 20 years. By the time we crossed over the Midwest, the cabin lights had dimmed. I should have slept. But instead I watched the dark window catch faint reflections of everyone around me. A mother asleep beside her child in row 2 because of my seat. A stranger beside me who noticed too much. A phone full of messages from people who needed me smaller by Monday morning. Somewhere ahead of us. In Manhattan. My family was gathering in a luxury hotel ballroom under flowers I had helped pay for, but would not be thanked for. The worst part was not that Claire was engaged. It was who she was engaged to. Daniel Whitmore had once stood in my apartment kitchen in Portland. Barefoot and nervous. Telling me he had never felt understood by anyone the way he felt understood by me. 6 months later, he told me he and Claire had accidentally developed feelings while I was working night shifts to help my mother cover the mortgage. My mother called it complicated. Claire called it fate. Daniel called it something we should all handle maturely. I called it betrayal. But only once. After that, I learned what happened when I used the correct word. My mother stopped speaking to me for 11 days. Claire sent me articles about forgiveness. Daniel mailed back the apartment key in a padded envelope with no note. Everyone acted like my pain was an inconvenience that needed to be managed before the engagement photos. And now I was flying across the country to smile beside them, because my mother had said, "If you don't come, people will ask questions." Noah must have felt the change in me. Because he turned from the window. "You don't have to answer this," he said. "But are you flying towards something, or back into something?" I looked down at my hands. They were steady. Which surprised me. "Back into something," I said. "But only for the weekend." He nodded slowly, as if filing that away. "Then decide what you're willing to carry before you land. People like that will pack your arms for you." I did not know then that Noah Mercer was not just a man in 34A with a paperback and a missing cookie. I did not know his company's software handled half the patient transfer systems my hospital used. I did not know he had 3 security people sitting rows away pretending not to watch him. I did not know Forbes had called him one of the most private billionaires in America. Or that he was headed to the same hotel for a closed-door investment dinner tied to my sister's engagement weekend. All I knew was that when the plane landed hard at JFK, my phone lit up with a family group text before the seatbelt sign turned off. Claire had sent a photo of herself in a white silk dress beside Daniel, smiling under gold lights. My mother had written, "Remember, Maya, this weekend is about Claire's happiness. Please don't bring old drama." I stared at those words until Noah stood to pull my bag down from the overhead bin. Then another message appeared. This one from Daniel. It said, "I hope we can be adults this weekend. Claire doesn't need guilt on her special day." I read it once, then twice. Noah watched my face change. And something in his expression went very still. "Maya," he said softly, like he already knew the answer would matter. "Who is Daniel?" I locked my phone, took my bag from his hand, and stepped into the aisle. "The man my sister is marrying," I said. "And the man who was supposed to marry me at JFK." Daniel's message sat in my phone like a hand on the back of my neck. I wanted to type 100 different things. every one of them sharp enough to leave a mark. Instead, I put the phone in my coat pocket and kept walking with the other passengers. Noah walked beside me without crowding me, his backpack slung over one shoulder. His expression calm in a way that made my own silence feel less lonely. Near baggage claim. He stopped before the exit split. "Do you have a ride?" he asked. "My family sent a car," I said, then checked my messages again and almost laughed. There was no car. There was only a note from my mother, saying Daniel's parents had needed the arranged sedan, and I should just take a cab because I was so good at managing little changes. I could feel Noah reading the answer on my face before I said anything. I hated that he was kind enough not to pretend. "I can call you one," he said. "I can call my own." The words came out harder than I meant them to. He didn't flinch. "I didn't mean you couldn't." That stopped me. Most men I had known turned wounded the moment a woman refused help. Noah simply adjusted the offer until it respected my pride. "Then thank you," I said, softer. "But I'll get there." He nodded and handed me a card. Plain white. Just his name and a number. No company title, no gold letters. In case the weekend gets heavier than expected. I almost gave it back. A stranger's phone number felt reckless, especially from a man I had met in a middle seat while emotionally bleeding through my cardigan. But something in me kept it. Maybe because he had not asked for anything. Maybe because he had seen me give away a luxury seat and did not call me selfless like it was a compliment. He had called it memory. That mattered more than he knew. The hotel was one of those Manhattan places that made you feel judged by the flowers. White orchids climbed out of black marble vases. A pianist played something expensive and forgettable near the lobby bar. My family had chosen it because Daniel's mother belonged to 3 charity boards and believed carpets should be quiet. I arrived with airport hair, a wrinkled blouse, and my business class dignity folded somewhere back in row 34. My mother spotted me before I reached the front desk. Diane Ellis was 61 and still beautiful in the kind of way that made strangers trust her before she spoke. She hugged me with one arm while looking past my shoulder, checking who might be watching. "You made it," she said, as if I had almost failed a test. Then she pulled back and frowned at my face. "You look tired." "Honey, did you sleep at all?" I changed seats so a mother could sit with her son, I said. "Oh." Her eyes moved over me with mild disappointment. "That was kind. But Maya, you have to stop making yourself uncomfortable for strangers. People will take advantage." I stared at her for 1 second too long. The irony passed right by her. Untouched. She turned toward the elevators. "Come on. Claire is upstairs. She's been very emotional. And I need you to be gentle." Claire was in a corner suite with champagne, garment bags, and 4 bridesmaids orbiting her like she was a small sun. She looked perfect in white silk, her blonde hair falling over one shoulder, her engagement ring flashing every time she moved her hand. Daniel stood near the window, laughing with his father. Polished and handsome in a navy blazer, I had helped him choose 2 years earlier when he still said he hated shopping without me. The room went slightly quiet when I entered. Not silent. Worse. Adjusted. The kind of quiet people create when they know a wound has walked in but they have agreed not to name it. Claire came toward me with her arms open, smiling too brightly. "Maya," she said, dragging my name out like affection. "You came." She hugged me in a cloud of perfume and whispered near my ear. "Thank you for not making this weird." That was Claire's gift. She could stab you and then ask you not to bleed on the carpet. I stepped back and smiled because everyone was looking. Daniel's eyes met mine for half a second, then slid away. He looked older than he had in Portland. More expensive. Less real. His mother, Patricia Whitmore, gave me a careful smile from the sofa. She had the face of a woman who had been told a version of me that required pity and distance. Claire clapped her hands once. "Okay. Quick thing," she said. "The welcome dinner starts at 7. But the gift table downstairs is apparently a mess." Mom said you're amazing with organization. So we thought maybe you could just check it before you get dressed. I looked at my suitcase beside my ankle. I just got here. I know, Claire said, widening her eyes as if she were the one being inconvenienced. That's why it would mean so much. You're calmer than everybody. I looked at my mother. She gave me the small warning smile she used in church when I was 12 and about to say something true. It's just 30 minutes. Maya. Daniel finally spoke from near the window. We'd really appreciate it. The way he said we landed harder than it should have. He and my sister, he and the family that had decided my humiliation was an unfortunate scheduling issue. So I went downstairs. Not because they deserved it. Because old training is a deep groove. And sometimes even when you know the road is wrong, your body follows it before your mind can object. The gift table was not a mess. It had not even been started. Boxes of place cards, ribbons, welcome bags, printed menus, and little glass jars of honey sat scattered behind a partition near the ballroom. A hotel coordinator apologized and said, "Your sister told us you were handling family logistics." Family logistics. That was what I became whenever love required labor. I took off my coat, rolled up my sleeves, and spent 45 minutes arranging someone else's celebration of a relationship that had begun inside the ruins of mine. Each welcome bag had Claire and Daniel's initials stamped in gold. C and D. Every time I pressed tissue paper around the monogram, I felt something quiet and tired move behind my ribs. When I finally got to the front desk, the clerk searched my name and looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Ms. Ellis. I don't see a room under your name." I gave her the confirmation number my mother had sent. She typed it in. Her face changed in that professional way people use before giving bad news. That reservation was modified this afternoon. The room is now under Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, Daniel's parents. Of course, I called my mother. She answered on the fourth ring, breathless and annoyed. "Maya. Where are you? I don't have a room." A pause. Then, "Oh. Sweetheart. Don't start." Patricia and Alan had an issue with their suite. And yours was the easiest to move. You can stay with me tonight. There's a chaise. I closed my eyes. A chaise. It's a very large chaise, she said. As if furniture size determined respect. Something inside me went very still. Not angry yet. Still. I looked down at the keycard folder the clerk had given me by mistake before realizing the change. My name had been printed on it, then crossed out in pen. That little black line felt more honest than anything my family had said all day. I thanked the clerk, picked up my suitcase, and went to my mother's room, because I did not yet know how to stop walking toward people who kept moving the door. The welcome dinner was held in a private dining room with candlelight and too many wine glasses. Claire had changed into a pale blue dress. Daniel kissed her temple when they entered. And everyone made a soft, approving sound. My mother patted the empty chair beside her. But when I reached it, Claire's maid of honor slid into it with an apology she did not mean. I ended up at the far end of the table near a decorative plant and Daniel's cousin, who spent the appetizer explaining cryptocurrency to me like I had been rescued from a cave. Then Patricia stood to make a toast. She spoke about family, destiny, and the mysterious way love finds the right people. She said Claire and Daniel had been brave enough to follow their hearts despite complicated circumstances. People nodded. Glasses lifted. My mother looked down at her salad. Daniel stared at the tablecloth. Claire wiped under one eye. Performing tenderness with expert timing, after the applause, Claire looked directly at me. "Maya," she said. Her voice honeyed and dangerous. "I know this weekend could have been awkward, but your support means everything. It shows real maturity." The table turned toward me. She lifted her glass. "To sisters who choose love over old pain." There it was. Not an apology. A public demand. She wanted me to bless what she had taken so no one else would have to feel uncomfortable about it. My hand tightened around my water glass. I could have shattered the moment with one sentence. I could have said Daniel slept in my bed, wore my father's old flannel, promised me a future, and then walked into my sister's arms while I was paying our mother's overdue mortgage. I could have said Claire knew exactly what she was doing. I could have asked my mother why my pain always needed to become someone else's redemption story. Instead, I lifted my glass halfway. Not high. Not enough to be mistaken for celebration. To choices, I said quietly. And the people who have to live with them. It was not loud, but it traveled. Daniel's face tightened. Claire's smile froze for less than a second. My mother touched my knee under the table. A warning disguised as affection. I moved my leg away. Across the restaurant. Through the open doorway to the private bar. I saw Noah. He stood with two men in suits and one woman holding a tablet. Dressed now in a dark jacket that made the hoodie from the plane seem like a disguise. He was not looking at the men speaking to him. He was looking at me. Not with pity. Not with rescue. With recognition. Like he had just watched a familiar game being played and understood exactly who had been forced to lose. I looked away first. I didn't want to witness. Witnesses make denial harder. But when dinner ended and everyone moved toward the lounge for cocktails, I found him waiting near a hallway lined with framed black and white photographs of old New York. He did not step into my path. He simply stood where I could choose whether to stop. That choice, small as it was, felt almost unfamiliar. "Rough landing?" he asked. I gave a short laugh. "The flight was fine." I wasn't talking about the flight. I leaned against the wall. Suddenly too tired to pretend. My sister is marrying my ex. My mother gave away my hotel room. I organized the gift table for their engagement dinner. And apparently I'm supposed to call that growth. Noah's jaw moved once. "The only visible sign of anger. That's not growth," he said. "That's training." I looked at him then. Really looked. "Who are you?" He glanced toward the lounge, where Daniel had just entered with Claire on his arm. "Someone who has been underestimated in cheaper clothes." "That's not an answer." "No," he said. "But it's true. For some reason, that made me smile despite everything." He reached into his jacket and handed me a folded hotel key envelope. I had my assistant book an extra room. No obligation. No strings. No rescue scene. Just a door with your name still on it. I stared at the envelope like it might burn me. "I can't accept that." "You can," he said. "But you don't have to." There it was again. A choice without punishment attached. I thought of the crossed-out keycard at the front desk. I thought of the chase in my mother's room. I thought of Claire's toast and Daniel's careful silence. Then I took the envelope. My name was handwritten on the front. Not crossed out. Not borrowed. Mine. Upstairs. The room was quiet. Clean. And empty, in the most merciful way. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time without turning on the television. My suitcase stood beside me like a witness. My phone buzzed 17 times. My mother asked where I had gone. Claire said I had embarrassed her with my choices comment. Daniel wrote. That was unnecessary. We are all trying to move forward. I read each message once, then placed the phone face down on the nightstand. But the last message came from an unknown number. For a second, I thought it was Noah. It wasn't. It was a photo. A printed schedule for Saturday's engagement luncheon. Under family reflection, there was my name. Maya Ellis remarks on forgiveness and sisterhood. Beneath it, in smaller print, Daniel Whitmore, announcement, new venture partnership. I sat up slowly. No one had asked me to speak. Then I saw the company name printed beside Daniel's announcement. Whitmore Health Ventures. In exploratory partnership with Mercer Systems. My hospital used Mercer Systems. My department depended on it. Daniel had once listened to me talk for months about the software rollout. The patient discharge failures. the fixes I proposed, the people it helped when it worked and harmed when it didn't. He knew my language. He knew my work. And now he was standing in front of investors with my world in his mouth. I opened my old email account for the first time in months and searched Daniel's name. There they were. Dozens of messages from when we were together. Draft pitch notes he had asked me to review. My comments in blue. My warnings about patient privacy. My explanation of what hospitals actually needed from technology vendors. At the time, I thought I was helping the man I loved understand my work. Now I wondered how much of my voice had been polished into his ambition. My hands were no longer shaking. That frightened me more than anger would have. I downloaded the emails into a folder. Not because I knew what I would do with them, but because something in me understood that memory was not enough anymore. They had always counted on my silence being softer than their story. They had counted on me choosing peace before truth. Downstairs, my sister was probably still smiling under gold lights. Daniel was probably still practicing tomorrow's announcement. I looked at the clean hotel key on the desk. Then at the old crossed-out folder from the front desk that I had kept without knowing why. 2 keys. 2 versions of the same woman. One erased for convenience. One finally given a door she could close. For the first time that weekend. I locked the room from the inside and did not answer when my mother called. By morning, the folder on my laptop had 37 emails. 4 draft documents. And 1 voice memo I had forgotten existed. Daniel had recorded himself rehearsing a pitch in my apartment kitchen 2 years earlier. Laughing every time he mispronounced a hospital term. My voice was in the background. Correcting him gently. Explaining the difference between discharge readiness and discharge pressure. At the time, it had felt intimate. Now it sounded like someone handing over a map to a man who would later pretend he found the road alone. I slept for maybe 3 hours. When I woke, sunlight cut across the hotel carpet in a clean white rectangle. And my mother had left 11 messages. The final one said, "Maya, I don't know where you are, but Claire cried herself to sleep. This is exactly what I begged you not to do." I listened to it twice while brushing my teeth. Her voice still had the power to make me feel 12 years old and selfish for wanting oxygen. The luncheon was at noon in the hotel's garden room. A glass-ceilinged space filled with white flowers and people who knew how to smile without showing curiosity. I wore the navy dress my mother had specifically told me not to wear. It had clean lines, long sleeves, and made me look exactly as severe as she feared. Before leaving my room, I put the crossed-out key folder and a printed copy of the luncheon schedule into my purse. I also uploaded every email to a secure drive. In the elevator, I found Noah standing alone. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie. One hand in his pocket. His eyes on the floor numbers. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at my dress and said, "That color makes people tell fewer lies." I almost smiled. My mother hates it. Then it's doing its job. The elevator descended quietly. I could feel questions between us. But he did not grab for them. That made me answer one anyway. "Daniel is announcing a partnership with your company today," I said. Noah's expression did not change. But his attention sharpened. "Exploratory," he said. "Nothing signed." He used to ask me about hospital discharge systems when we were together. I thought he cared about my work. Noah turned slightly toward me. Did he? The question was not cruel. It was precise. I looked at my reflection in the elevator doors. No. He cared about what my work could make him sound like. When the doors opened, Noah did not move right away. "Maya," he said. "If he is presenting clinical workflow knowledge as his own, that matters. Not because of ego. Because bad healthcare technology hurts real people." I nodded. That was the part I could hold without feeling petty. This was not just about Daniel stealing sentences from a woman he had already betrayed. It was about him walking into rooms full of money and using borrowed credibility to build something that might affect families on the worst days of their lives. The garden room was already half full. Claire stood near the entrance with Daniel, glowing like she had been lit from underneath. My mother saw me first. Her eyes dropped to the navy dress. Then, to my face. "There you are," she said tightly. "We were worried sick. You were calling." I said, "That's different." She flinched as if I had cursed. Claire stepped forward, her smile trembling with controlled outrage. "Where did you sleep?" she asked. "In a room with a bed?" I said, "It was a nice change from the chaise." Daniel touched Claire's lower back, steadying her for an audience that was not watching yet. "Maya, can we not do this today?" he said. His voice had that careful public softness I used to mistake for maturity. "Do what I asked. Answer questions." His jaw tightened. My mother leaned closer and whispered, "You are embarrassing yourself." For the first time in my life, I did not shrink from that sentence. I looked at her and said, "No, I'm embarrassing the arrangement." That was when Patricia Whitmore joined us, smiling with cool concern. "Everything all right?" she asked, though her eyes had already decided it was not. My mother recovered instantly. "Family nerves," she said. "You know how emotional these weekends can be." Patricia gave me a sympathetic look that did not reach her mouth. "I understand, this must be complicated for you." "Maya, Claire has such a forgiving heart." I almost admired the efficiency. In one sentence, she had made my sister generous and my pain unattractive, before I could respond. Noah entered the room behind her. A strange ripple moved through the space. Men straightened jackets. A woman near the bar whispered to her husband. Daniel's father turned so quickly his drink nearly spilled. Claire's eyes widened. And Daniel's face changed in a way I had never seen before. Not guilt. Calculation. Noah Mercer was no longer a helpful stranger from seat 34A. In that room, he was capital. Access. Approval. And danger wrapped in a quiet suit. Daniel moved toward him with practiced warmth. "Mr. Mercer. Daniel Whitmore. It's an honor. I'm looking forward to showing you where we're headed." Noah shook his hand once. "I've heard enough to be interested in what you believe you understand." Daniel laughed because he thought it was a compliment. I saw Noah's eyes move briefly to me. Only briefly. But it was enough to remind me that I was not invisible in that room, unless I agreed to be. Lunch began with polite conversation and controlled seating. I was placed at a table near the back again. This time with distant cousins and a retired orthodontist who told me marriage required women to let small things go. I looked toward the front, where Claire sat beside Daniel. Both of them, framed by white flowers. Noah had been seated at the investor table to Daniel's right. My mother sat close enough to glow in reflected importance. Then Claire stood. She thanked everyone for coming, called Daniel her destiny, and said their love story had taught her that sometimes life rearranges people for the better. People sighed. Daniel kissed her hand. My mother wiped a tear. I folded my napkin in my lap with slow, even fingers. Life had not rearranged us. Claire had stepped over me. Daniel had let her. And my mother had swept the footprints into a pattern she could call fate. After Claire sat, my mother took the microphone. I had not known she planned to speak. As a mother, she began. "Nothing matters more than seeing your daughters choose love and forgiveness." My stomach tightened. Our family has faced challenges, but today we celebrate unity. She looked toward me with the softness she used when sharpening a blade. And I am especially grateful to my eldest daughter, Maya, for being here with an open heart. She has always been the strong one. There it was. The old cage. Polished for guests. Strong meant quiet. Strong meant useful. Strong meant she could hurt me publicly and expect me to thank her for the compliment. Then she turned toward the small printed program on the table beside her. "Maya, sweetheart, would you come say a few words about sisterhood?" 100 faces turned. Claire tilted her head with that delicate smile. Daniel watched me like he was daring me to prove them right. I stood slowly. My knees felt hollow, but my hands were calm. As I walked toward the front, I saw Noah lean back in his chair. Not relaxed exactly, but ready. My mother handed me the microphone, squeezing my wrist hard enough to hurt. "Keep it kind," she whispered. I took the microphone from her and looked at the room. So many flowers. So much money. So much effort poured into making betrayal look beautiful. "I was not told I would be speaking today," I said. The room shifted. Only slightly. My mother's smile froze. Claire's eyes flashed. "So I don't have a prepared speech about forgiveness. That may be for the best. Because forgiveness is meaningful only when the truth has been allowed in the room." A fork touched a plate somewhere near the back. Daniel's mouth went flat. I could feel the old fear rising. But it no longer controlled my voice. I looked at Claire first. "My sister and I have been asked to pretend that what happened between us was complicated. It wasn't. The man she is marrying was in a committed relationship with me when their relationship began." Claire inhaled sharply, already preparing tears. I turned slightly toward Daniel. "And Daniel has spent 2 years telling people our breakup was mutual and mature. It was not mutual. It was managed." My mother stepped forward. "Maya, that's enough." I did not look at her. "No," I said. "That word is new for us. But I'm going to use it." The room went silent in the way rooms do when people realize the person they plan to control has stopped following the script. I reached into my purse and took out the printed luncheon schedule. I was also listed today as giving remarks on forgiveness and sisterhood without being asked. My hotel room was given away yesterday without being asked. My labor was used for this event without being asked. Claire's tears had arrived. Perfect and immediate. "I was trying to include you," she said. "No," I replied. "You were trying to use my presence as proof that you had done nothing wrong." The sentence landed harder than I expected. Claire looked toward Daniel for help. But Daniel was staring at the papers in my hand. He knew me well enough to understand that I did not carry paper unless it mattered. I folded the schedule and placed it on the podium. "But that is not the reason I came up here." I turned toward the investor table. "Daniel is scheduled to announce a healthcare technology venture today. Some of his materials were built from conversations, drafts, and clinical workflow explanations he took from me during our relationship." Daniel stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "That is absurd." His voice was too loud. Too fast. The room heard it. I opened my phone and tapped the secure folder. Then placed it on the podium beside the microphone. I have dated emails with my comments on his early drafts. I have document histories. I have a voice memo of him rehearsing language he did not understand while I corrected him in my apartment. More importantly, I have a record of warnings he removed from the pitch because they made the product sound harder to sell. Noah's expression changed then. Not surprise. Confirmation. Daniel looked at Noah. "This is personal drama. She's upset about the engagement." Noah did not answer him immediately. He looked at me instead. "May I ask one question?" he said. I nodded. "Did you write the section on discharge risk stratification and caregiver readiness?" I swallowed. "Yes." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Anyone can Google that." Noah turned to him then. And the room seemed to lose temperature. "Not the way it appears in your deck." My mother grabbed my elbow. "Maya. Stop this, right now." I looked down at her hand until she removed it. That small motion felt like a door unlocking. "You taught me that family means sacrifice," I said to her, quietly enough that only the first rows heard every word. "But you never explained why I was always the sacrifice." Her face changed. Not with remorse, but with fear that others had heard. That told me everything I still needed to know. Patricia stood, pale with outrage. "This is an engagement luncheon, not a courtroom." "Correct," Noah said, his voice carried without effort. "Which is why no one here is being judged. But Mercer Systems will not proceed with any discussion until all submitted materials have been reviewed for authorship, clinical accuracy, and ethical compliance." Daniel stared at him. "You can't be serious." Noah's eyes stayed steady. "I usually am." The room broke into whispers. Claire looked as if the flowers had betrayed her personally. Daniel leaned toward me, lowering his voice. "Do you understand what you're doing?" he hissed. I looked at the man I had once loved. The man who had taught me that tenderness without character is just decoration. "Yes," I said. "For the first time this weekend." "I do." He reached for my phone on the podium. And Noah's assistant appeared beside us so quickly I had not seen her move. "Don't," she said. Calm and professional. Daniel pulled his hand back. That was when I understood the real reversal had not come from Noah's wealth or his presence. It came from the fact that I had finally stopped protecting people from the consequences of what they had done. The evidence mattered. The room mattered. But the true leverage was simpler and harder. I was no longer willing to be the quiet woman who made their story comfortable. I stepped away from the podium. But my mother blocked me near the side of the room. Her voice was shaking now, though still controlled enough for appearances. "You have ruined your sister's weekend." I looked at Claire, who was crying into a napkin while Daniel whispered frantically to his father. Then I looked back at my mother. "No," I said. "I stopped letting you use my silence to decorate it." Outside the garden room, the hallway felt colder and cleaner. I walked past the framed photographs, past the orchids, past the front desk where my name had been crossed out the day before. I did not know what would happen next. I did not know if Daniel's venture would collapse, if Claire would marry him anyway, if my mother would ever call me without needing something. But I knew this. I had entered that room as a prop in their forgiveness story. And I had left as the author of my own. When I reached the elevators, Noah caught up but stopped several feet away. He looked at me the same way he had on the plane. Not rescuing. Not applauding. Just seeing. "You okay?" he asked. The honest answer was no. My chest hurt. My hands were cold. A lifetime of obedience does not leave the body just because you finally speak. But beneath the pain, there was space. I could breathe inside it. "I don't know yet," I said. He nodded. "That's a fair answer." The elevator doors opened behind me. Before I stepped in, my phone buzzed. A message from Claire appeared on the screen. "How could you do this to me?" I stared at it for a long moment, then typed the first reply I had sent her all weekend. "I didn't do this to you." I stopped doing it to myself. The elevator carried me up in silence. But my body did not understand that the confrontation was over. My heart kept striking like it was still standing at the podium. My palms were cold. My mouth tasted metallic. I stepped into my room, locked the door, and leaned against it until my knees stopped threatening to fold. Speaking the truth had not felt like victory in the moment. It felt like tearing open a wall I had spent years pretending was just wallpaper. My phone became a storm. My mother called 6 times, then texted that I had humiliated her in front of people who mattered. Claire wrote paragraphs about betrayal. Irony, apparently having died somewhere between the white flowers and her engagement ring. Daniel sent one message only: "You don't know what you've done." I stared at that line for a long time. Then I typed back, "I know exactly what I stopped doing." And blocked his number before fear could negotiate with me. 20 minutes later, there was a soft knock. I looked through the peephole and saw Noah standing in the hallway with his hands empty and his posture deliberately unthreatening. I opened the door only halfway. He did not try to look past me. "My team is beginning a formal review," he said. "I wanted you to hear that from me. Not through hotel gossip." I nodded, gripping the edge of the door. "Does that mean you need something from me, only consent?" He said. "Nothing you gave me today gets used without it." That word settled somewhere deep. Consent. I had spent the weekend being assigned rooms, speeches, emotions, and roles without being asked. Noah said the word like it was ordinary, like any decent person would. I opened the door wider. He handed me a slim folder. Inside was a simple authorization form allowing Mercer Systems Ethics Council to review the materials I had mentioned, with my approval and without giving Daniel access to my private files. No pressure. No hidden trap. Just a line where my choice belonged. I'll read it first. I said. I expected you would. He looked tired now. Less like the billionaire people had recognized downstairs, and more like the man from 34A, who had given me a cookie without turning it into a favor. For what it's worth, he added. I believed you before I saw anything. My throat tightened. Why? He held my gaze. Because on a plane, you gave up comfort for a frightened child, and then apologized for taking up space in economy. People reveal themselves in small transactions. I signed after reading every line. Not because I trusted him blindly, but because the document made room for distrust. And that was what honest things do. He took the folder. Then paused. There's one more thing. Daniel is gathering people downstairs. He's telling them you're unstable and that the documents were part of an emotional collaboration between former partners. I almost laughed. Of course he was. Men like Daniel did not panic by confessing. They panicked by turning women into weather. Is Claire there? I asked. Yes. My mother, also yes. I looked at the navy dress hanging over the chair where I had dropped it. Then at my reflection in the dark window. I looked pale. Scraped, raw, but not broken. Then I should go down. Noah's expression sharpened. You don't owe them another performance. No, I said. But I owe myself a clean ending. He stepped aside as if that settled it. The private conference room was smaller than the garden room and colder. With a long table, glass walls, and a view of Manhattan pretending not to watch. Daniel stood at the head of the table with his father beside him. Claire sat with red eyes and perfect posture. My mother stood near the coffee service, holding a cup she had not drunk from. Patricia Whitmore looked furious in a controlled way, which meant she had not yet decided who to blame publicly. Daniel stopped speaking when I entered. Maya, he said, his voice gentle for the room. I think emotions got ahead of facts earlier. I closed the door behind me. Then let's use facts. Noah's counsel. A woman named Elise Grant placed a laptop on the table and connected it to the screen. She did not introduce drama into the room. She introduced timestamps. That was far worse for Daniel. The first document appeared on the screen. Daniel's original pitch draft from 2 years earlier, filled with my comments in blue. Then the revised version he had sent investors, with my clinical explanations polished into executive language and my warnings removed. Elise clicked through calmly. The metadata shows these files were edited on Ms. Ellis's personal laptop before Mr. Whitmore incorporated the language into his venture materials. The warnings about caregiver readiness, discharge pressure, and data misuse were present in the early drafts and absent from the investor deck. Daniel leaned forward. She was my girlfriend. Couples help each other. Couples do not erase authorship and present clinical expertise as their own. Elise replied. Especially not in a healthcare venture seeking institutional trust. Noah stood near the wall. I silent. He did not need to dominate the room. The evidence had a voice now. It spoke in dates, edits, attachments, and the calm destruction of Daniel's version of events. Then Elise played the voice memo. My apartment kitchen filled the room. Daniel laughed through the speaker. My younger voice corrected him gently. Patient and tired after a hospital shift. No. Discharge readiness is not about getting beds open faster. The recording said. It's about whether the child can safely go home and whether the caregiver understands what danger looks like. I watched Claire's face change. Not because she felt sorry for me. Because she recognized intimacy. She had taken a relationship. But she had never heard that room. Daniel reached for the laptop. Turn that off. Elise closed it before he touched anything. Noah finally spoke. Mercer Systems is terminating exploratory discussions with Whitmore Health Ventures. Effective immediately. We will notify the other parties that submitted materials are under ethical review. Daniel's father went pale. Patricia whispered his name like a warning. Daniel stared at Noah. Over a personal dispute. No. Noah said. Over credibility. You borrowed expertise, removed safety concerns, and misrepresented the foundation of your proposal. Claire stood so quickly her chair struck the wall. So that's it, Maya ruins Daniel's future. And everyone just believes her because she made a scene. I looked at my sister and felt something old loosen. Not gently, but completely. Claire. I didn't ruin his future. I stopped letting him build it out of things he took from me. Her face crumpled with rage. You always do this. You always make yourself the victim. I nodded once. And you always need me to deny I was hurt so you can feel innocent. My mother stepped between us. Enough. We are family. That word used to pull me by the throat. Family. The magic word that turned theft into sharing. Silence into respect. And pain into a personality flaw. I looked at her hands. At the cup, trembling slightly between them. Family is not a place where one daughter gets protected and the other gets explained away. I said. You taught Claire that my boundaries were obstacles. You taught me they were selfish. Both lessons end today. For once, she had no quick answer. Claire cried harder. But I no longer moved toward the sound. Daniel began talking to his father in a low, urgent voice. Patricia turned away, already calculating reputational damage. The room that had been built to contain me now had too many exits and no place for their story to stand. I picked up the crossed-out key folder from my purse and placed it on the table. My mother looked at it. Confused. This was my room, I said. Then it became convenient to give it away. That has been my role in this family for years. A seat to trade. A room to move. A speech to assign. A silence to borrow. I looked at Claire. Then Daniel. Then my mother. I'm not available for that anymore. No one spoke. There are moments when cruelty expects a fight and is stunned by a boundary instead. I left the conference room without slamming the door. That mattered to me. A slammed door still asks the house to hear it. I wanted something quieter. I wanted the kind of ending that did not need their reaction to be real. In the lobby, the orchids still stood in their black marble vases. Expensive and indifferent. The pianist was playing again. People checked in, checked out, laughed into phones, carried luggage toward elevators. The world continued, which felt rude and merciful at the same time. Noah walked with me to the front entrance. But he did not ask where I was going. Outside, New York moved in bright. Impatient lines, yellow cabs, black cars, steam from a street grate. I breathed in cold air and realized I was shaking. I'm not always this dramatic, I said. Mostly because I needed to hear a normal sentence. Noah smiled faintly. I met you giving up a business class seat and receiving economy pasta with dignity. I assumed there were layers. That made me laugh. And then the laugh broke into something close to tears. I wiped my face quickly. You called me true earlier without saying it, I said. On the plane. The way you looked at me. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't think. There's my destiny. If that's what you mean. I'm not that foolish. I looked at him. Then what did you think I thought? There is a woman who still chooses decency after being trained to disappear. That is rare. That is worth knowing. I did not know what to do with a sentence like that. So I held it carefully and did not answer too fast. Fairy tales would have made him the reward for my suffering. He was not. No man should be. But he was a witness to the part of me my family had tried to make invisible. And there was tenderness in that. I'm not ready to be anyone's love story, I said. Good. He replied. Be your own first. I flew home the next morning. Not in business class, and not ashamed of economy. At the airport, I saw a mother struggling with a stroller and a little girl dragging a stuffed rabbit by one ear. I helped lift the stroller onto the shuttle. But when the mother thanked me, I did not apologize for being in the way. That was new. Small. Almost invisible. But healing often begins in places too ordinary for applause. Within a week, Mercer Systems confirmed publicly that it had ended discussions with Whitmore Health Ventures due to concerns in submitted materials. They did not name me. I had asked them not to. My hospital reviewed my documentation and later invited me onto an internal advisory group for patient discharge technology. Not glamorous. Not cinematic. But real. The kind of power that helped families understand medications at midnight and kept children safer after leaving a hospital bed. Claire postponed the wedding. My mother called from 3 different numbers before leaving a voicemail that began with, "I'm sorry you felt unsupported." I deleted it halfway through. Not because forgiveness was impossible forever, but because apologies that avoid verbs are just fog. Daniel emailed once through a new account, saying he hoped we could discuss things like adults. I archived it unread. Being an adult had never required me to keep reopening the wound for the person holding the knife. Noah and I did not become a headline. We became 2 people who knew how to speak carefully. He sent me a book recommendation 2 weeks later. Then a photo of an airport cookie with the caption, "Still not mine." I replied 3 hours later because I was learning that I did not have to reward patience by rushing. Months passed before we had dinner. Longer before I trusted the quiet between us. Love, if it came, would not be a rescue. It would be a room with 2 doors, and both of us free to leave. That spring, I bought a business class ticket again. This time it was not to impress my family or arrive polished for people committed to misunderstanding me. It was for a conference in Chicago, where I was speaking about caregiver readiness and ethical hospital technology. When the gate agent called for boarding, I stood with my carry-on and felt the old ache flicker. Then I walked down the jet bridge without guilt. A young father and his daughter were seated across the aisle from me. The child was nervous, gripping a stuffed fox and asking if the clouds were hard. Her father answered every question with patience. I watched them for a moment, smiling to myself. Kindness had not been the problem. Giving had not been the problem. The problem was believing that love required me to vanish so others could be comfortable. I kept my seat. I opened my laptop. I ordered tea when the flight attendant asked. And when she handed it to me, I said thank you without shrinking. The window beside me held a pale reflection of my face. Older than the girl who used to accept the alley bedroom and the unpaid bills and the crossed-out key. Softer in some places. Sharper in others. Mine in all the ways that mattered. People think revenge is always loud. Sometimes it is a courtroom. A recording. A headline. A ruined deal. But sometimes revenge is quieter than that. Sometimes it is keeping the seat you paid for. Sometimes it is refusing the speech they wrote for you. Sometimes it is blocking the number. Closing the door. And letting people meet the consequences you used to intercept. I did not lose my family that weekend. I lost the job of protecting their version of me. That was different. That was freedom. Because the day I gave away my seat, I thought I was repeating the old pattern. But by the time I came home, I understood the truth. A good heart is not the same as an open wound. And the right person will know the difference. I used to think being good meant giving up my seat, my room, my comfort, and my voice so other people could feel loved. But that weekend taught me the difference between kindness and disappearance. A good heart is not an invitation to be used. Silence is not the same as forgiveness. And sometimes the strongest revenge is not destroying the people who hurt you, it is calmly taking your life back and never again asking for permission to keep your own seat.